So I'm curious, how would you define kinky?
Kinky. Me.
Well, Merriam-Webster says kink is anything related to, having, or appealing to unconventional taste, especially in sex. AKA, literally everyone at Pride who is not vanilla having penis and vagina sex. Okay, topic over.
Oh my god,
We're done.
okay,
Everyone's welcome at Pride. There we go.
See you, everybody. Hello!
Welcome back to
What's Safeword?
I'm Amp.
I'm Miss Christopher.
And today,
we're getting kinky.
it is that time of year where all the gays come out in full force, the corporations start flying the rainbow flag for a month, only a month, and then also the discourse about if kinky people belong at Pride.
Of course they do.
Because I love my inbox being spammed with tons of people saying that I'm being inappropriate and causing harm to people, and that's just... whew.
Can't we just all have fun and get along?
No!
Ooh, that's kinky. Yes, Daddy.
Hey there, Editing Amp here. I'm just gonna be here every once in a while. I absolutely clean my room. You can't see the mess under my desk, so it doesn't count. And I'm here to help with the discussion. Quick point of clarity, this video was actually recorded about a week and a half ago, well before Pride was not only trending as a topic when it comes to Kinksters, but before a lot of the discourse started online. And this year, bringing up a bunch of newer but more specific fallacious reasoning and rhetoric that I want to make sure that I cover in this video. I'm specifically butting in, because my mentions this last week were very inflammatory, aggressive, accusatory, and just plain out mean, but like also just full of a lot of weird thought processes that I'm going to include in this video. So again, I promise not to butt in too much, but I'll be here or there. But without further ado, back to the video.
So, of course, this time of year, our inboxes are flooded with all sorts of opinions about whether Kinksters should be at Pride.
And I see you, Brenda. Please wait till the end of the video. We're gonna give you our opinions. Because we keep getting asked about this specific topic, please wait till the end of the video for all of our opinions, facts, and just takes on if Kinksters belong at Pride.
Is Brenda the new Karen?
Yes, Brenda! Actually a friend of Karen.
Oh.
But both of them have lots of opinions about if Kinksters should
Are
be
they
Pride.
lesbians?
Well, we don't know.
Because they belong at Pride.
Yes, they do. So why do we have this discourse every year? Well, that's because people try to erase the experiences and the histories around Pride. Hate to break it to you, but Pride was actually started by trans women of color, sex workers, biker clubs, and gasp, men and women that wore leather, as well as drag queens, LGBTQ. Everybody was there from the get-go.
And Pride started as a riot for sexual liberation, not a family-friendly corporate event.
So today we're gonna put this topic to bed, and this video is also sponsored
by Helix Sleep.
And we'll get to that later, but first I did some research, I reviewed, I went on the positives, I went through the negatives, and I tried to take a good middle ground approach where I understand where people are coming from with their criticisms of Kinksters, but I wanna be very fair to the history of Pride itself. So let's just jump right into it.
Kinky.
And the first discussion point today is that Pride should be a family-friendly event.
So actually, Pride started as a sexual liberation riot. We were proud that we have sex with each other and not feeling like we had to hide that anymore.
And it used to be illegal to be gay. So in these bars that were getting raided by the police, we eventually fought back. We couldn't have had Pride without everyone that was there from the get-go, which also included the leather men and women.
Kinksters.
Kinksters. And for whatever reason, some gays think that we need to be more family-friendly for corporations that want to be a part of this event, when in fact that goes absolutely against everything that Pride started for and stands for. This is not about conforming, this is about being who we are and standing up against that stigma that revolves around who we are and our identities.
And trust me, the corporations will support us. We don't need their money to do that.
And at the same time, this discussion shouldn't be about conforming or why we should make something more appropriate, especially with the event in mind. When in fact, we allow corporations like Google and YouTube and Twitter into our parade. But when we actually look at the facts, GLAAD came out with an audit they did this last month on social media sites that are actually very unsafe for LGBTQ plus people. They went through and they figured out how the algorithms negatively affect people like me and our communities, and lead to further harm to marginalized communities specifically. When we're focusing on parts of the community that do exist and are helping, why are we not instead focusing on how corporations are still included and allowed in our Pride parades? We could be having more constructive conversations about policies and things like that, maybe even doing audits and what counts as an ally when it comes to corporations and money, but instead we're attacking a community that has been there from the get-go, that continues to do the work, and continues to support our community.
Not to mention there's a vast history behind Pride and who we are as Kinksters. Kinksters were there making sure that we were supporting each other. When people were dying of AIDS during the AIDS epidemic, we had actual systems in place where we held each other's leathers and goods and gear that families would normally throw out when someone was dying of AIDS, and we made sure that that history was preserved and passed along. Mr. S. Leather, for example, the owner, Alan Selby, was a part of that in San Francisco and made sure that we were preserving our history. At the same time, our biker clubs and our the butch lesbians especially, were there holding our hands and making sure that we were being taken care of as Kinksters, as people, as humans.
It's actually the lesbians that got us through the AIDS epidemic in the very early days and all the way through.
I repeat, Pride is not about conforming and reforming to be more family friendly. Riots are not a child's family friendly appropriate topic, so the fact that we want to conform and make that more family friendly just doesn't really make sense in that context. But that takes us to our next point of contention.
Dun dun dun.
Kinksters are only at Pride so that they can have sex in public.
So I think there's a difference between having sex in public and glorifying sex in public.
Now, as we are the end-all be-all of all kinky decisions... Oh. Yes, kinky legal? Oh, we're not. Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. We are not the end-all be-all decisions here, but we are a perspective, and every time I see someone saying that kinks shouldn't be allowed in public, it tends to come from this scapegoaty,
I saw somebody once that was licking someone else's boot, and that was a scene, and you were having sex in public.
And what's more concerning, at least for me, is the straw man arguments and the mischaracterization of terms like BDSM, kink, and fetish. It shows that these people making these flagrant arguments don't actually know how to define the word or know how to express how they feel about it properly. If you're going to be making these generalizations, you need to have facts, you need to have evidence, and you shouldn't be using emotional reasoning or trying to mind read the people that you are projecting onto, which seems to be what's happening in a lot of these discussions and debates that I'm seeing. People are using mind reading, which is a form of distorted thinking, where we actually assume and project malicious intent on someone without actually having a conversation. This is how fallacies happen in arguments and discussions. And again, fallacies are a failure in reasoning which makes an argument invalid. This is where we use those scare tactics, those straw men, those slippery slopes, and that's just not how you debate a point. So I'll say it again. Kinksters are not at Pride to have sex.
That is not what Kinksters are trying to do by marching in a parade in clothing that is appropriate to the parade. Parades and marches do have guidelines, and we still have to adhere to them.
So me dressed in leather is not me having a scene or trying to have sex any more than the go-go boy in a thong twirling around a pole is.
If you're worried about seeing sexual acts, you probably shouldn't be at Pride, just because of the fact that Pride is about sexual liberation. Again, I was in the leather and kink contingent a few years back, and behind us there was a bunch of very powerful, empowered lesbians with no shirts on and pasties on their nipples, and in front of us were a bunch of go-go boys in thongs. Now, I was in arguably leather attire, but I was, again, not having sex in public, and somehow I'm the one that is inappropriate here.
Not saying either of those were inappropriate, but will be called out. So that leads us to the next point of contention. Pride is not about sex.
Now, if we haven't already convinced you that Pride is about sexual liberation, let me hit you with some more facts. With consent.
Yeah, it is.
Pride is many things, but first and foremost, it is a defense of sexual freedoms, of who we love, who we have sex with, and who we just want to be able to, hug and kiss. The original Pride flag actually used to feature 8 distinct colors, each one standing for something special and different that represented Pride. First of which, of course, was pink, which represented sex. Then we had red for life, orange for healing, yellow for the sun, green for nature, turquoise for art and magic, blue for serenity, and purple for the spirit. Unfortunately, pink and turquoise had to be taken out because manufacturing at the time couldn't fulfill those needs, and so we kind of just adopted the flag without those 2 colors. But it was there from the get-go.
So to say sex wasn't part of Pride originally, you're kidding yourself.
Okay, everyone take a nice group sigh.
And let's enjoy an ad break from a sponsorship that makes this episode possible, from Helix Sleep, whose sponsorship funds go directly to the Trevor Project today in support of Pride Month, and acts as a reminder to stop pushing our community out of Pride. If you've watched any of our videos in the last year, you've probably seen some of our Helix sponsorships, so you know that we only believe about pushing kinks out of our bedroom when it comes to our mattress with Helix Sleep. And while I, Amp, got a new mattress, Daddy was incredibly jealous, but thanks to the support that you guys have shown us and Helix Sleep through the show, they've sent Daddy his very own mattress as well. Better yet, Helix knows that everybody is different, and they let us do the sleep test one more time, showing both mine and Daddy's sleep preferences, where he's more of a back sleeper and I'm more of a side sleeper, put in our heights, our weights, our ages, and we found the perfect mattress specifically for him. Because it turns out you can take the sleep quiz by yourself or with a partner. And based on our results, we got the Helix Midnight Luxe. And our other favorite part about the Helix mattress process is the unboxing of the actual mattress itself, which comes in a nice small box, and Daddy's, unlike Pride, are not included.
Hello. Wait, where are you going? No, come back!
And then you let the mattress actually expand, which happens in just a matter of minutes.
Listen to it.
Shh. ASM, are you ready for comfort?
Beyond Helix being built to keep it kinky in your bedroom, they're also well crafted and vigorously tested and bounced on for the kinky times in mind.
Hey, stop.
They're not only easy to buy online, but they also provide the best customer service as they deliver it right to your door for free and provide you with a 100-night sleep trial. So you get more than 3 months to take your mattress for a kinky spin. And if you don't like it, they'll pick it up for you and give you a full refund. So if you'd like to try out Helix Sleep, use the offer code WATT down below for up to $200 off your mattress and 2 free pillows on us. Again, that's offer code WATT at the link down below for $200 off your mattress. And through doing this, you support our channel and make sure proceeds go towards causes like the Trevor Project. Again, thank you to Helix Sleep. Now back to the discourse.
The next point of contention, which is going to be an interesting one, and I understand where people are coming from, but goes on to say Kinks and Kinksters are not part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Oh, then I'm gone.
Oh, okay. Bye.
Don't need me. Which is literally nonsense. If anything, they're the bedrock of the LGBTQ.
I agree. So again, you couldn't have had Pride without everyone that was there from the get-go. They built the foundation of that house that represents Pride that everybody else lives in. If we didn't have that foundation, that house would not exist.
It's a big house and every group is represented.
And personally, as I identify, I am a kinky gay man. That is how I identify, and that's how I talk about myself. It is so intertwined and integral to who I am as a person that yes, that is part of my representation.
And remember, older Kinksters paved the way for you to be able to party the way you can now.
In her book, My Dangerous Desires, Amber Holloway writes, "For some people, gay rights and gay liberation do not hinge on particulars of sexual desires. But for many of us, it does begin there. It does revolve around the ways we organize our erotic choices. Before LGBTQ+ existed, people had pride parades where our community spaces were not just bars, but cruising spots like bathhouses, dungeons, and public restrooms. It should be no surprise that many queer folk find their sex lives and sense of community to be intertwined in that way." That speaks to me so integrally to who I am and why I am the way I am.
And it speaks to my memories.
Oh yeah, do you remember back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
Because back in the day, that was the only way you could find other queer people.
We didn't have Grindr and the internets.
And so why are we trying to appease the internets to make these places family friendly? Ah! Hello? I shouldn't yell. Oh.
Is that legal from finance?
No, it's Karen from finance.
Oh.
But now this takes us to one of the most contentious parts of this discussion. Again, discussion, not argument, which says you are involving people within your scenes which are harmful and you don't have consent. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this point, and this is where people tend to jump the shark or find a fallacy somewhere because they are over-sexualizing kinky people, or maybe even just assuming certain things about them by how they're dressed, or how their gear looks, or just what they're doing in a parade.
Which is exactly what people used to do with just the word gay. All they would picture is 2 guys or 2 girls having sex with each other. They went straight to sex. So why are we doing it to each other in our own community?
Because sex scares us. People being sexually liberated is a scary thing for some people in our culture for whatever reason, because we don't talk about sex in a positive, pleasurable, or even educational sort of way.
We do.
Well, that's true. But we're also demonetized, age restricted.
Demonetized.
Which is also where we should talk about the difference between harm and actual discomfort. Now, just because someone's walking along in leather and being sexually liberated, that is not being harmful, but is that discomfort the reason that we should disregard and just whitewash and pretty much erase the history that is Pride?
If you want discomfort, I'll give you
No,
discomfort.
no.
It's at this point in the conversation we see that words fail us when we start to have these conversations about topics that we don't fully understand. And we turn towards archaic versions of definitions in dictionaries, which the definition could, again, be used to categorize everybody at that pride parade as being kinky if you read it a certain way, instead of talking to Kinksters and contextualizing it and having a conversation. When we start using this definition to then conflate it as it's only people in gimp suits with erections trying to have sex in public, there's a problem there. First of all, not all gimps have erections. Second of all, if you've ever worn rubber in the blaring hot sun at a pride parade, you know that you're not going to have a lot of blood down there because it's impossible to have an erection. And this is where that mind reading and projection comes in again. You don't know someone's intent, especially when it comes to tradition or when they're trying to honor the history of our community. If you're going to accuse a community of something, you should at least know the terminology and definitions that you are referencing. When you say something like kink in public or showing off your fetish, I would ask you what you think kink is, what you think fetish is, and how you define these actions in action. But that's just not what's happening in these conversations. I would rather see Kinksters involved in this conversation where we have back and forths that don't turn into screaming matches. So that's why I'm here. Hi.
So the irony is not lost on me that discomfort that you're feeling for people in your own community is the same discomfort people have for gay people in general.
And I think it's good to have that perspective as well. Should we have spaces that are free from harm and trauma for people? Absolutely. Should we have more family-friendly spaces where everybody can enjoy it? I'm all for it. Our pride has it, and many prides across the world do have family-friendly spaces. But this is a celebration of sex and love and who we are as fully formed beings, sex included. So if that is something that's going to trigger you, seeing someone in a harness or even a puppyhood, it might not be the right environment for you.
So if you're asking for a pride that's free of sexual dynamics or any PDA, that's probably unrealistic.
And not the world that we live in, with the amount of pop culture, TV, music that covers these topics. Kids are already seeing it. So if you're going to bring them to a pride parade, at least have discussions, be prepared for that, and know that you're going to see nudity. And it's not just going to be from kinky people.
It may be time to teach them about the birds and the bees, or how the bees sting the birds.
With consent.
Now, this is one of the funnier oppositions of kink at pride that I'm seeing, especially in my DMs and messages, is that kink is being harmful and that we need to think of people like the asexual community because they're all sexually repulsed and they don't want to see your sex in public. Y'all, I identify as demisexual, which not a lot of people know because I have not done a video on it, which coming, I swear, I'm just gonna make it. Because people yelling at me that we need to protect the asexuals, demisexual it is part of the asexual community, which again, kink is not always sexual, and many asexuals find kink to be a healing factor. Let's look at like ace or arrow people that don't like physical touch, but they like the idea of intimacy, and they like intimacy with a partner that they trust, get to know, and build a life with. While those people don't experience the want or needs or arousal to have sex, they do experience and enjoy kink in such a way that they're able to build and form a connection with someone. At the core, it's that dialogue and getting to understand someone as a fully formed person that makes them attracted to them in that way. Even if sex isn't happening, you can still have that dynamic and feel that bond with someone that is protective, comfortable, and sex doesn't have to be involved. But kink can. It's at this time that I also see people yelling and screaming for a community without consulting the community. So when in fact they're trying to, or at least they say they're trying to protect someone, they're in turn actually attacking the community that they're saying they're protecting. It's very backwards.
Which brings us to our next point of contention. Please think of the children.
I mean, yes, they just watch Teen Wolf and Riverdale, and they love RuPaul's Drag Race, but God forbid they see people walking around in leather. Pride should be fun, but the queers are not a spectacle for your family-friendly outing.
And there are many studies that show that thinking of the children actually leads to more censorship
And harms marginalized communities. So thinking of the children, while possibly good in intention, is actually bad in practice. Almost every frickin' time.
That's why The Simpsons mock it so much.
Those same sex educators that talk about thinking of the children being bad also talk about how they have to answer questions from children and teens about like what furries are, what consent is sex pleasurable, what the hell's CBT? They're already asking these questions, and so if they're at a pride event, they've probably learned quite a bit from the internet because we don't actually teach our kids very well or censor what they're seeing or monitor what they're doing. Thank you, parents. Do your job. Kids are not being triggered by seeing people kiss, by seeing people in Speedos or seeing breast hanging out or even seeing someone in a dog mask. And if they are, that is a lovely time for a parent to actually teach their kids about what people do. I mean, it at an age-appropriate level, of course, but if a kid asks why those two men are kissing, they love each other. If a kid asks why they're wearing that harness and the leather pants, they're wearing a costume that makes them feel cool like a superhero. There are so many ways that we could have this conversation. And again, I don't think these celebrations are always going to be kid-appropriate or family-friendly. But there are and should be more spaces like that for the people that need it.
And speaking of RuPaul, think of kink as another form of drag. Are we going to ban drag queens and RuPaul next?
Could you imagine trying to ban drag queens from Pride? Oh my freaking God. I mean, RuPaul's Drag Race is incredibly sexual, but it has a huge underage audience. So if we're really gonna have an argument and talk about banning kinks and kinksters from Pride and marching, you're gonna come for the drag queens next, and then who? We can't have these conversations about banning people from Pride when all of these people made Pride possible.
Ooh, I know. I will wear my kink gear and just put a wig on.
As pretty as you are, I don't know that I want to put you in a wig. It brings a new meaning to the term pig in a wig.
Ooh.
This one's another one that comes up a bunch that nobody's asking for, but everyone loves to scream about, is that by having Kinksters in Pride, we are trying to add the K to the LGBTQIAA+ acronym, and nobody's asking for that.
No, we have enough letters.
But people will try to get that slippery slope in there because they like it slippery. We don't need the K in there. Again, being kinky is integral to some people's identities and personalities and who they are, but we don't need to add that to the acronym, and nobody wants that.
Not to mention, talking about kinksters leads to conversations about consent, pleasure, wants and needs.
So let's actually discuss how repression of things like sex can lead to actual trauma and harm and internalized emotions, or even homophobia, transphobia, and in this case, kinkphobia. By stigmatizing kinks in this way and making fallacious arguments, we actually create a world in which we don't have good conversations that turn out to be educational. Using a personal anecdote, I had a friend who was unable to express their love for their breath play kink. And in practicing it unsafely and not having a proper education or able to have a conversation, even with their sex positive friends, they ended up practicing it alone and passing on. This is how avoiding conversations lead to actual harm. Not discomfort at a pride parade, but actual physical harm that can lead someone to end their life. Seeing kink at Pride and normalizing it in that way allows us to have conversations and allows us visibility so that people like my now departed friend have a community they can approach and say, hey, I'm into this thing that I was always told was wrong, inappropriate, and I was going to go to hell for. That kind of thinking does actual trauma and actual harm to people. And I need us to understand that people marching in a parade, dressed in leather, representing a history and a culture and providing visibility is trying to educate and inform and start conversations. We should be doing more of that. Also, if you're really worried about not all kinksters are queer arguments, not all drag queens are queer either. But we still want to have drag queens at the event because they stand for and represent what Pride is all about.
And I think everybody could learn something from being a little bit more open and talking about your kinks. Of course, at an age-appropriate level, but you know, your health class sure ain't gonna talk about that anytime soon. So welcome to our channel. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
We're really very nice. Usually our topics are not this aggressive, but like this has just been going on for years, and I just want to put this topic to bed. Again, did we mention today's episode was sponsored by Helix Sleep?
And he's a kinkster, so he wants to pound this home.
In the bed. My new Helix mattress.
Woohoo!
As I was reviewing and researching for this episode, I did find a few videos that actually referenced me by name and referenced my Twitter thread, tweet by tweet by tweet. And I just want to say that like tweets are not perfect. You only get so many characters. But one of the biggest things that people had criticism-wise, and it's fair, was that I was saying all kinksters should be at Pride and all kinksters are allowed at Pride. Well, what about the straight kinksters? They shouldn't be there because allies are cool, but they're not part of and shouldn't be marching in the parade. I get it. And I appreciate your cherry picking. I appreciate a good cherry popping too. But who's to say that somebody is not a pansexual or bisexual kinkster? We can't really put those labels on someone without knowing their history and backstory. And that's not always for us to assume. So let's just allow kinksters, queer Kinksters of all kinds to be included in Pride.
And you know what assuming does?
What?
Makes an ass out of you and me.
Well, I mean, two bottoms don't make a top, but I'm versatile, so bend
Go.
over, daddy.
Again, why are we having this conversation again? It's exhausting. Trust me. I was up all night reading through every hot take just so I made sure I covered everything. And one of the most funny ones that came from someone within our community said that kink at Pride makes Pride less accessible. And I don't know what they meant by accessible, because instead of arguing about Kinksters, we could be having actual conversations that are important, like actual accessibility for those with disabilities. So many prides are not accessible in that way. Or how marginalized communities generally get attacked more often at these events, and we should be protecting them. How about the discussion of cops at Pride? That could be really constructive. Or talking about hundreds of bills all over the world that are being passed that are targeting our trans children. These are conversations we could be having around Pride, being proud, and being visible.
At the end of the day, this is a discussion. I am not the end-all be-all. I am not trying to speak for everyone, but I am trying to bring perspectives and show that Pride is about being who we are.
And I don't want to hide who I am as a Kinkster.
But we're not trying to be at these Pride events to be explicit. We're not trying to involve anyone in scenes. And we're not trying to have sex in public, which is always that one criticism. And we sure as hell are not trying to get drag queens out. I mean, if you cancel the Kinksters, you're canceling the drag queens too.
They'll come for you, baby. Woo!
Yes, Mr. Paul? Oh, no, we're not trying to cancel the drag. No, we're not. I understand. Okay. Well, they already had theirs, so... Oh, okay. Great. RuPaul says hi. But let's continue to have discussions around this topic. I welcome the actual discourse that comes, so long as it's coming from a place of, like, wanting to learn more and destigmatizing. A lot of the discourse online does come from faceless profiles that are just trying to stir that pot. And while I do like a good meal, I don't like when it is homophobic. But also, a really big takeaway I want to talk about is the generational divide that I saw when having this conversation with my community. It's very interesting because people of your generation, not trying to be rude, fought for the freedom to do something. In this case, be yourself. While people more on my side or younger are fighting to be free from something. And they're trying to make sure that they're not being triggered, or they're trying to be away from the homophobic people. And I completely understand that, but talking about the topic, those are two very different perspectives.
And one of the most important factors of Pride is seeing the representation of people that aren't like you in our community.
Exactly. And so when you talk about it from a younger perspective, being free from triggers or things that feel harmful, that's because we're talking about representation more and more. We're talking about the fact that asexuals are part of the community. Non-binary people are part of the community. For whatever reason, trans, bi, and lesbians are still somehow pushed to the side in all of this, and that is not okay. We should be including everyone and their backgrounds and how they identify, because that's what our community is about, providing a safe space for people to be themselves.
So Kinksters shouldn't just be at Pride, they belong at Pride.
They helped start Pride, and we wouldn't have Pride without them paving the way in so many different ways. So if you got some ideas, opinions, if you want to have this conversation, we do welcome that in the comments down below.
We're here, we're queer, we're kinky, get used to it. What?
And beyond today's episode being sponsored with parts of those proceeds going towards the Trevor Project, we are also dropping some brand new merch that is now available for pre-sale for the next 2 weeks.
Is it Pride related?
It is. It is a new pansexual and homosexual holographic print tees available now, again, for the next 2 weeks. So if you'd like to help us raise some money for a good cause and get some limited edition merch,
It's available now in the description below.
So, thank you again for tuning in today. I realize this conversation's somewhat long overdue, but also one of the most important ones and most heated debates that we've had on this channel.
He's pretty gay.
You're gay.
I know.
And kinky.
And proud.
And valid. So if you have some opinions, you want to continue this discussion, please leave those comments down below.
If you like ringing bells, ring the bell.
And don't forget to subscribe to What's the Safe Word. We hope that you guys all have a lovely Pride Month, and get out there. Get proud. Get queer. Get kinky. Get loud. Ooh, that rhymed.
Ooh. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Ooh, can we have a What's the Safe Word float this year?
The only float that we're having is going to include ice cream and some sort of soda, and we're going to drink it.
Kinky.
What would the What's the Safe Word float taste like?
Rocky Road.
Ew, Rocky Road and soda? What is wrong with you?